But without further ado, so excited for this chat with Apoorva Mehta. Not only as an avid user of Instacart, I can't recall the number of times I was in a pinch because I ran out of diapers for my newborn and used Instacart to buy the diaper. So I'm excited and also grateful for this conversation. So we'll aim for about 20 to 25 minutes of questions that I've prepared, and then 20 to 25 minutes for Q&A. So yeah, looking forward to digging in. So Apoorva Mehta, I know you graduated from Waterloo, worked at BlackBerry, Qualcomm, and then Amazon, and then iterated through about 20 different ideas, and then stumbled upon Instacart, and then that became an amazing thing, and then now you're on to your next big thing. So would love to like take it back to the very, very beginning. Like at SBC, we talk a lot about the -1 to 0, and so would love to learn about your -1 to 0 of like, where did you grow up, where were you born, like what did you like to do, any entrepreneurial ventures when you were young?
That's like -10 to 0,
yeah.
right? Like,
yeah.
So I grew up in 4 countries in 3 continents. And so being adaptable was the name of the game for me. I had to learn new languages, new social norms, and that was the only way I was going to be able to thrive in those cultures. And I think that really helped me as an entrepreneur, because when I started Instacart, I didn't know anything about the grocery industry. And of course, like, you know, all the other companies that I started, I didn't really know much about that category either. And I get this question a lot from entrepreneurs where they ask, you know, should I be entering this business, which when I don't really know much about this new category? And I often say that's actually very okay to do that, as long as within about a year or so, you're at the top 5 percentile of understanding that domain. And that's how you're able to really connect the dots and actually make a difference in that new category. And so for me, it was really just the diversity of cultures and experiences that I had growing up.
What were some of those places that you grew up in?
I was born in India, but I was 20 days old when my parents decided to relocate to Tripoli, Libya, which is in North Africa. Completely different setting, and you know, all sorts of unique challenges there. And then I was 15 when my parents decided to immigrate to Canada. Obviously very different. And after graduating from university, I decided to move to Seattle to work at Amazon. So 4 countries, yeah. You know, pretty different.
And what was the catalyst for each of those moves?
So you know, I can't speak for my parents. When I was 15, my parents decided that just, you know, the amount of opportunities that you have, obviously in North America, are just, you know, far higher than where we were, and so it just made sense to think about like what you know, what happens after we, you know, graduate from high school and so on. My parents are, you know, they struggled through it, and it was a very big culture shock, of course, for my brother and myself, but it was an incredibly large culture shock for my parents, who had made their lives in, you know, very different cultures, and at that age for them to adopt the North American culture was incredibly difficult. But you know, that adversity was really helpful for me. I was not used to the Canadian winters. I don't think, you know, I don't think most people here would be either. But I remember there was a time when we had just moved to Canada, when my mom and I went to the grocery store and picked up our groceries, and then, you know, we didn't have a car, so we would like take the bus back. And I vividly remember the feeling of carrying these grocery bags in, you know, like freezing weather, right? And the feeling on your fingers that like, you're like, I can't wait to get back home and like, get in a hot bath. And I remember that and that how painful that experience was. And, I didn't know it then, but
So
I guess
early
subconsciously.
subconsciously, the early like beginnings of Instacart were like imprinted into you.
Maybe it was some fate there.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
I loved reading about how you like iterated through like 20 different ideas. Would love to hear like just like the range of ideas that you explored, and maybe a little bit about like how you went about validating and discarding those ideas.
Yeah. So I read this book maybe 10, 15 years ago, which was called How We Got to Now. Show of hands if anyone's read that book. Okay, maybe a couple people. Great. So it's introduced this concept of adjacent possible, which basically means that at any given point in time in history, there are certain ideas that are possible then that were not possible before. All right, and it's because societal norms have changed, culture has changed, technology has developed, and I'll give you an example. In 2012, smartphone penetration was quite high. People, a lot of people had credit cards. Most people had credit cards or debit cards, and it was quite common to shop online. Right, that was a societal norm. As a result of those three things being true, Instacart was actually possible in 2012. People had tried to bring groceries online in the early 2000s, and Webvan, right? And it just didn't work because those three things were not true, and so the idea was just not adjacent possible at the time. And so when I was thinking about what I wanted to do, what companies I wanted to build, I was thinking about what was adjacent possible at that point in time. And I remember at this point, Facebook platform was actually growing quite fast. And so social gaming was now possible and growing quite fast as well. And there were all these wonderful social games, but they didn't really know how to monetize. And so one of the ideas that I experimented with was an ad network for those social games. Another one was Instagram had just launched at this point in time, and people loved taking photos of their food. And so I thought, this was an incredible trend. But when you entered a restaurant, there was no way to tell what was great there or the reviews of the individual items on the menu. And so I created a menu item ratings app. It was becoming a social norm for small businesses as well as for customers that daily deals were a concept. And so I created a daily deals a company just for lunches and dinners. Now some of this was just personally inspired, as you would imagine. And so those are just iterations and ideas that were now possible because of social norms, because of the culture changing, and because of the technology getting to the point where those things were possible.
And so in those ideas, most of that you discarded, are there any that come to mind now that are now adjacent possible given the time that's progressed, like the past 11 years? That
I think it's possible. I think, to understand if an idea is a good idea, you have to carry out a pretty deep process. One of the things I learned through this process was that iteration speed is everything. The faster you go through the ideas, the more shots on goal that you have, the more chances you have of success. And so one of the best things you can do with any idea is before you start writing any code, before you hire anyone, before you do any deals, the first thing to do is try to kill that idea. All right. Before and the way you kill the idea is, you write down the top 5, top 10 reasons why that idea will not work. And then you step back and you sort of evaluate whether you can overcome those challenges. And if you can't overcome those challenges, right, there's no point investing any time into it.
What would have been that list for Instacart?
Oh my God, there was quite a few, right? The number one, it's never going to make any money. That was top of the list. It's never going to really scale, right? This is an incredibly operationally complex problem, right? It's never going to scale. And even if you were to scale it, it's only going to scale in the top 10 metros in the country. So how big is it really, all right? There are many more, and what there's a couple things here. Number one, I think that the best companies are sort of started when they actually are, they break the norms, they break the rules, all right? When it's so clear, for example, like with TikTok, no one thought that, I thought video was like really well done already with YouTube, and social was obviously very well handled with Facebook. But there's this company like that sort of creates this product and spends billions of dollars on marketing, right? Which is not done in social, historically, right? So they broke every single rule. With Instacart, it was the same thing. Like, it was those questions that we were trying to sort of validate, right? They're saying, okay, these are the reasons why it doesn't work. It's what a great entrepreneur does, is says, well, yes, of course, that's the conventional thinking, but maybe what's adjacent possible today is, because of the technological changes and norms and so on, this is now different. And with Instacart, we could actually make money because if you could close the loop for the biggest advertisers in the world, i.e. the CPG companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi, you could easily make money on that. Number two was, yes, it doesn't work. It doesn't scale if you have to build, 20,000 warehouses in the country. But if you use existing warehouses, existing grocery stores, you can actually make this work. And now it was possible because when you wanted to order your groceries, we could connect you with someone who was close to the grocery store, who had a smartphone in their pocket, who would be able to pick and deliver the groceries to you. And so a lot of change in the world, and the answers to those questions were different in 2012 than they were in the early 2000s.
Super interesting. I love reading this story about how like the hustle and the scrappiness that you talked about around like delivering the 21st Amendment beer. And I think it's kind of apropos that on your 21st idea, you delivered 21st Amendment beer. Take us through like your mindset in that time, like the early days of forming Instacart. Was it all roses and sunshine? When did you know you had product market fit?
Does everyone know the 21st Amendment story?
Please share, yeah.
Okay, so I got rejected from Y Combinator. All the partners were saying, well, like, look, you're applying so late, it doesn't make sense. I got introductions to all these partners at Y Combinator, and they're like, no, it's too late. And then I got this one response from Gary Tan, who's now the CEO of YC, who said, you can apply, but it's most likely, not going to work, right? And so I was like, well, you're telling me there might be a chance, right?
You're telling me I've got a chance.
Then, unfortunately, a couple days later, you got rejected again. And I was like, I couldn't comprehend it because I just believed in the idea. All right, like I was just like, have they actually tried out the app? All right, and so I ordered a 6-pack of 21st Amendment IPA.
How did you choose that?
So I'll tell you that in a second. And addressed it to Gary Tan at the Y Combinator headquarters. 30 minutes later, I get a call from Gary Tan. He's like, "What's this?" And I'm like, "This is Instacart." And now to your question, why did I choose that beer? I found out through a friend that he liked that beer. So then the next day they did a special interview for me, and that's how we got into Y Combinator.
Nice. Were you secretly the deliverer?
No.
So you put a lot of faith into your app that someone would just deliver it, get the right thing, and on time.
So in those days, I was hiring shoppers during the day and writing code at night. And so I knew all the shoppers, like they were on my speed dial.
Don't mess this one up.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, no, they would literally come to my apartment and I would interview them.
Yeah.
And so I knew who they were. Yeah.
Awesome. Are there other stories of like that creativity and ingenuity of like that come to mind for you?
I mean, our team was just incredible in coming up with solutions that to problems that we were encountering. For example, do you guys know about the chicken and egg problem that marketplaces face? Yeah. If you don't have demand, you're not going to get supply. If you don't have supply, you're not going to get demand. We had that at Instacart, where this was like a pretty small operation running from my apartment, so of course, we're not going to have big retailers partner with us, right? We have no reason for them to partner with us. And of course, from a customer standpoint, they wanted to order from all these grocery retailers. And so what we did was, in order to get the catalog of each one of these stores, we went in to the store and bought one of every single item. Took it to a studio, took photos of those items, and immediately we had the best catalog for those stores anywhere available online. And overnight, our sales doubled. And then we did that again for a different store, and then we did that again for a different store. And today, Instacart has the best catalog of grocery in the world. So this, of course, now we obviously have hundreds of people working on this, but this scrappiness was just part of our DNA.
I can only imagine what your apartment or people's apartment looked like when you're like bringing home all those SKUs and all those items.
Are you kidding? we ate like kings.
Yeah. Hopefully you had also like dogs and cats for like the dog foods and cat food and all that.
Hopefully, yeah.
So at what point did you know that you were onto something?
On day one. It was very clear. I didn't have to question product market fit at all. It was just validated. It was being validated more and more every day. But if you guys have tried building new products and getting them in front of customers, one of the things that you see is that when you build a product and then you share with them to try and use it, they're products where you have to sort of ask them again and again, like, hey, give it a shot, all right? And there are products where people use it and automatically, and then they sort of are sharing with their friends immediately. And then before you know it, like I would get a text message every time someone placed an order, and I was getting text messages with names of people that I didn't even know, right? And so it was so clear that we were onto something.
In terms of, were there any moments where you felt like it wasn't going to work out after that initial
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Take
I
us
mean,
back to
it is it's pretty rare for a company to not have moments where you think that's not going to work out. Well, you're going to have that, right? It's just par for the course.
What was that moment?
I had several, but I'll give you one of them. One of them was, it was the summer of 2017, and I got this. I had this very early morning meeting with the CEO of Whole Foods, which was the largest partner on the Instacart. They had 30-40% of our sales. And it was very odd because it was like a 6 a.m. meeting, right? Anyway, so I get on the call. He tells me in the first 5 seconds of the call that Amazon, our largest competitor, had decided to buy Whole Foods, our largest partner. So at the time,
Yeah.
I thought that
What
that
was going through your mind?
I mean, it was a gut punch. It was like, this is it, right? This is idea number 21. So it was incredibly difficult. We after I got my head together, I called an all hands with the whole company and told them that this means that we're going to be in war mode. And we will prevail, and we're going to come back in the next couple of weeks with a plan, and that's what we did. And that plan involved signing every major grocery retailer on Instacart, continuing to expand dramatically across the country, and growing our subscription business very significantly as well. To the point that by the time Whole Foods left our platform, they were less than 1% of our volume, and we had every major grocer in the country on our platform. And so this was obviously an incredible challenge, but the team rallied, and we came out far stronger. And obviously today we're far larger than Amazon.
Yeah. How did what do you think supported you in that moment to charge forward, go into wartime versus peacetime, versus I could imagine many other CEOs having a different reaction. Is it a part of your DNA? Have you faced these kind of challenges before?
I mean, I think I really do think that a lot of times, I do think a lot of times crisis is an opportunity. Crisis is a gift. It allows for focus in a way that is so hard to create. Now we had, of course, as every company I'm sure talks about sense of urgency and execution excellence and so on, right? But here we had this moment in time when our largest competitor had just bought the largest partner, right? I mean, how do you create that moment, all right? And that meant that there was only one way out, which was to really fight through it. And so we used this as an opportunity to rally the team, and the team worked harder than they've ever done.
Amazing. So take us through towards the tail end of your time at Instacart. How big did Instacart get? And then how did you know it was time to transition on to your next adventure?
I mean, look, of course, it was I had the great fortune of being part of Instacart. And by the time I left, we were delivering groceries and helping people order groceries online nationwide in tens of thousands of cities in the United States and thousands of cities in Canada. We were doing over $25 billion in sales. We had, and people didn't think that we were going to be profitable. We were cash flow positive in doing over $500 million in ad revenue. We had an incredible team that was executing on all cylinders.
And how did you know it was time for you to transition? Because
Yeah.
there's probably a counterfactual to this world where you continue on.
Totally.
What was going through your mind to re-enter the -1 to 0?
Yeah. I mean, look, it really depends on what fulfills you. All right. For me, I love the invention. I had a chance to invent a business model to solve a problem that most people didn't think was solvable. Get that to scale, get that to be profitability. So I kind of felt like my job was done. And I wanted to invent something to solve another really big problem. It really depends on what fulfills people. For me, it was the invention.
What was it like the first couple days or weeks after you left Instacart? Because I can imagine when something is such a big part of your life, it's like part of your identity.
Yeah.
I even feel that way sometimes when I move neighborhoods. I can only imagine what it feels like when you have worked and dedicated your life to something for 10 years.
Yeah.
What does day one look like after transitioning? What did you do?
That's a great question. I have this really bad habit of checking my email 15 times a minute. And that was developed because there was just, so much intensity at Instacart all the time, right? When I transitioned off, it didn't happen overnight, but soon the number of emails that I got went down. And so I thought that was a very interesting sort of, it took me time to get adjusted to change my habit a little bit. That was one example.
And then how long were you then exploring ideas? How many ideas did you iterate through? What was different this time around than the first time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I took 3 weeks off, to be honest, that's the longest time I've taken off in the last since I started Instacart. And then I started exploring areas that have been fascinating to me for some time. The first category of ideas that I started to explore was in climate. In climate, one of the coolest things that's happening in climate right now is in carbon removal. So of course, we want to stop emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That's all the wonderful work that companies like Tesla are doing by just reducing emissions. Then there's a group of amazing companies that are removing the excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and sequestering it so that it is not contributing to global warming. That was a really interesting area to me, just because that seemed like an area where technical and product innovation could really change the trajectory. So I recruited a former SpaceX engineer and a post-grad from Berkeley, and we started a modular direct air capture company. In fact, I built a direct air capture device in my backyard, it was a lot of fun. I believe it or not, I got a couple of chemistry tutors because there's a lot of chemistry that's required here, and my chemistry is not that good. That was really wonderful. While doing that, I realized that all the best ideas were not coming from me. They were coming from my co-founder, Glenn, who was the SpaceX engineer. And so it made sense for him to be running the company. And so he's running that company today, and they're doing incredibly well. After that, I started exploring space because that was just an interesting area for me. I was just like looking at how the cost of getting to orbit was going down pretty dramatically as a result of the reusable rockets from SpaceX. So the idea I explored there was this idea called planetary Wi-Fi, where today on Earth there's only like less than 5% of the surface that actually has any connectivity. And so, most of the devices, whether they're phones or old, new, or even IoT devices, they have Wi-Fi connectivity. And so, how could you create, a constellation that would allow for the world to have Wi-Fi everywhere? I explored that one. I was not the right founder for that for multiple reasons. I looked at robotics and humanoid robots as well as teleoperated cars. So, variety of diverse areas. For either they were not the right fit for me as a founder, or they were not just good business ideas.
Yeah.
I decided not to pursue them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Cool.
those were some of the ideas.
And to the extent that you're able to share, what is it that you're working on now?
Yeah. So to be very candid, I'm not sure if we're out of the -1 to 0.
Yeah.
All right. I think that might take some time. With Instacart, it took me 20 ideas to get to the right one.
How many ideas are you in this time? Like 4 or 5?
Probably 4 or 5.
Okay.
But of course, the bar is different.
Yeah.
Also, I am just looking for different things this time around.
Anything you're doing differently around like team formation, company building the second time around?
Yeah, it's. Look, there's so many things that we fortunately got right at Instacart. One of the things was the team. We just had an excellent early team, and so this time around as well, they're just incredibly important to me. For anything that we do, you just build an excellent team that really, when you have an excellent team, it shows you all the things that are possible, all right? And when you don't, it tells you how nothing is possible, all right? And so, it just continues to be incredibly important.
Cool. So just have a last set of rapid fire questions, and then we'll turn it over to the audience here. I did some homework. I reached out to some friends who reported into you at Instacart to try and solicit some, in honor of that hot sauce bottle that you had in your fridge. I tried to solicit some spicy questions, but no one was able to really give me any juice. So you really ran like an iron fist.
Yeah, there you go. That's the right.
I reached out to Sunil,
sure,
Mike Sabis, and Sean Twersky, and they gave me some stuff, but
they're all wonderful.
Yeah,
they're wonderful for not giving you more.
Okay, first one. If we could see your personal Instacart order history, what would you be most embarrassed to share that you order on a regular basis?
I order way too much chocolate. It is, my wife and I are just really into chocolate. Yeah.
Nothing to be embarrassed about there.
Yeah. No. The quantity of chocolate.
Yeah.
That's the.
Okay. How much do you tip?
It depends. Actually, that's a good question. It depends. When it's a small order, we just a lot of times the settings are lower, so we just go higher. And when it's a very large order, it's whatever the settings are.
Yeah. What's the most interesting thing you've seen delivered on Instacart?
I don't know if it's it became interesting, but we had this bug in our catalog where people couldn't order individual bananas, right? Or it wasn't, they could order individual bananas, but it didn't, to the shopper, it seemed like you're ordering bunches of bananas, right? And so one time a customer ordered 10 bananas, right? Unfortunately, they ended up with 10 bunches of bananas. But it was all taken care of because we sent them recipe for banana bread.
Nice. Last book you read?
So I have this habit of reading multiple books at the same time because my mood changes, right? And so I just switch between them. So I actually don't remember them, but let me tell you a couple that I read recently that are very interesting. Actually, whenever I think about a category of companies that I want to build, I end up picking up a book that's related to them. So for when I was looking at climate, I started reading Alchemy of Air, which is truly an excellent book about the Haber-Bosch process. When I was looking at space, I read Eccentric Orbits, which is, again, probably one of the best books I've ever read. Highly recommend. Now I'm doing healthcare, so I read this, and specifically in pharma, I started reading this book called 10 Drugs. It's about just a handful of molecules that have changed civilization in a very interesting way, whether it's opium or statins. So those come to mind.
Cool. Your New Year's resolution, if you have one.
I have a few.
Okay.
And they're all sort of categorized. And so, like I have a whole set of resolutions for health, and I have a set of resolutions for family. So I'll give you one for health, which, this one is the most likely to fail, but we'll see, is to do more cardio. We'll see how that goes.
SBC has a run club Wednesdays at 4. So if you're ever around, Thursdays at 4. So you'll have a group of folks here.
There you go.
Willing and able to keep you accountable. Someone told me to ask you about Fernet.
Oh man.
I heard you're like a big Fernet fan. What's up with that?
That is fake news. You guys know what Fernet is? Some people are saying yes, and some people are saying no. The people who are saying no, you don't want to know. It really is. It's a digestive, alcoholic digestive.
Do you take it with your chocolate?
Absolutely not. I really want to enjoy the chocolate, but if you haven't tried it, it's probably worth trying once so that you want to avoid it for the rest of your life. But it became a tradition at Instacart where, on the first day of, when anyone started, I would have to do a Fernet shot with them. And the reason it became that was because we had one day we just had these returns for a bunch of alcohol, and you couldn't return alcohol to the store. Just they don't allow that. So it just ended up in our office across the street, actually, from here. We just gave a lot of it away, but no one wanted to take the Fernet, and so we just had excess Fernet in the office, and so that became a tradition.
Awesome.
To welcome people.
Cool. Last question. What's something besides cardio that you want help with?
That I want help with.
Yeah.
I'll talk about something I'm trying to get better at, which is I feel like thankfully, just through the experiences that I've had, my instincts are actually pretty good. I'm trying to get better at listening to them. Yeah.
So listening to your instincts. So I'm sure there are a couple people in the audience that can help out with that. Awesome. Well, I really enjoyed this portion of the conversation. We'll open it up to Q&A. So if any folks here have questions, we'll take the mic to you probably. So first off, we'll go to over here, Jonathan.
2 questions, answer one or both if needed. You're doing a partnership with Chase where Chase members get the Instacart Plus. Which way does the money flow? Who's paying who? And then second, rest of world. You're only in US and Canada. I imagine that was a constant thing in the back of your mind that we should be expanding, we have to expand. It's too late to expand. Or just maybe talking about how that played out.
So 2 questions. Number 1, Chase partnership with Instacart. How does the money flow there? And number 2 is international expansion. How do we think about that? So first, I can't share anything about the partnership. The international expansion was, something that we thought about all the time. I think, as a company, you always have to figure out how much you take on and what is the ROI of that. You cannot be the world leader in online grocery if you're not the world leader in American grocery. America has the largest grocery market in the world, and so we needed to win here. And so it became critical to win here. So that was a big reason for the focus. And the second was, you have to ask how developed is the market? Is the customer really looking for a service that we're offering? Is the retail ecosystem ready to adopt what we're selling? So in countries like India, for example, it's a very different retail landscape, all right? China, very different retail landscape. Countries like UK, maybe they're a little bit more developed. They already have online grocery shopping, right? And so these are all factors that we considered, and I'm sure the team's considering at the moment as well.
Over there.
Hey, my name is Gus. I currently work at ShipBob, the third-party logistics for e-commerce merchants. And so I was going to ask you about the Onfluence situation because we modeled that when Shopify got into third-party logistics, and they were like one of our biggest partners and sources of customers. And so, because I can't answer that question because you already answered it, could you provide us with another example? We have like a holy crab model.
So for those listening online, he's asking for what's another holy bleep moment besides a Whole Foods acquisition?
Holy bleep moment. We had quite a few. This was in the beginning of the year in 2020. All right, we had our whole annual plan that we're going to execute on, and we just look at our order volume, right, day by day, and then we realize, oh, wait a minute, this is not seasonal, right? We shouldn't be growing this fast. So, growing fast is great. We'll take it, right? And then the next week, you're growing. We were doing considerable amount of volume at this point. This is 2020, right? And we're growing 10% faster than the last week. Then we're like, hey, it's awesome, right? The week after that, we're doing 10% more than the week before this. Every week, we're just growing, at a very high volume at 10% week over week. And the reason that was happening was because we were under a global pandemic. And that's, initially that's okay, but then you realize that means that your entire infrastructure needs to be completely rebuilt. The way, like, there's just not enough shoppers that we have on our platform just to handle that demand because we're just seeing so much faster growth. And over the next, 6 months, we saw growth that we were anticipating in 5 years. And so that plan that we had for the whole year had to be completely scrapped. And the only thing that the team was doing was making sure that we were there for the community during this pandemic. And so all the plans scrapped. Only thing to make sure was that we had shoppers, they were safe, and we were available for our customers. And you know, I've never seen people work so hard in my entire life. You ask anyone at Instacart, you know, what was the time that they remember and they relish the memory of most? They'll tell you it was during the pandemic, and it was because that was a holy shit moment. And you know, we could have sank or swam. Most of our competitors, including Amazon, shut down, but Instacart continued to thrive. Yeah, so that was another holy bleep moment.
Yeah, I was looking through my Instacart orders history, and there was definitely like a large spike in like the March, April, May, and like looking back on it, I don't know what I would have done without Instacart during that time. Maybe onto this side, in the brown.
What was the closest you ever got to entertaining an acquisition, and why did you choose to not accept it at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question because a lot of times acquisitions, M&A in general, in startups, is sort of taboo, right? People don't like to talk about it. And some reasons make sense, right? Like there's just strategic reasons why you don't want to talk about it. But the best advice I've gotten on this is that companies should have M&A or just have that as a type of a part of their agenda as part of their board meeting to have M&A conversations, at least at the board level, on an annual basis. Just because you're evaluating your options, and it may not make sense, but you're evaluating it. Yeah, and so with Instacart, I can't, you know, of course, it's confidential, but I think the best way to look at it is just very objectively.
You're doing great, like public CEO of like not revealing the confidential answers. In the back with a hat.
The talk. I had a question. I'm very interested in two-sided marketplaces and how it works, and I'm pretty sure that's how you make a business sustainable, is to make sure that to make everybody happy. How does Instacart measure success in that sense? If you have grocers and consumers, how do you balance it too, and how do you make sure that we're sustainable as a business, make it within the right time?
Yeah, so the question is, how do you make marketplaces succeed, and specifically Instacart? So Instacart's a four-sided marketplace. So we have customers who are ordering their groceries. We have shoppers, the people who are picking and delivering the groceries. We have retailers, where the groceries are coming from, and then the advertisers who are promoting on this platform. And it's by creating, specialized products for each side of the marketplace that really understands their needs and delivers on their promises. That's how you make it successful. And so, on our marketplace, consumers get this amazing service. Shoppers are able to earn money while providing the service. Retailers are able to get incremental volume, and they're able to access customers that they wouldn't have because they're just further away or just want to order online. And advertisers are able to earn an ROI on their ad spend. And so, you really have to think about the whole ecosystem to make a viable marketplace. There's quite a few here.
It is, yeah.
Mulas, having had such an incredible success with obviously Instacart, does it make you feel happier or lighter for your next kind of thing that you're working on? Does it give you a sense of freedom, or do you feel as though it's kind of also leads to higher expectations? And how are you thinking about that emotional part of the journey?
That's a great question. So, Do I feel like I have higher expectations? Yes, absolutely.
That's crazy because you've had such a huge debt, but now so you don't feel lighter.
I mean, it's true. Like I said, earlier, what makes you fulfilled? And for me, it is inventing things that solve big problems. I wouldn't work on something if I didn't believe that it had a shot of being a much larger company. But candidly, that's where the fun is, all right? That's where the challenge is. It's at the edge, right? Exactly. Go ahead.
So, Instacart was here very successful. Is there any mistake that you constantly on top of your mind, keep in mind to prevent this kind of route and, the team adventure?
So were there any mistakes that perhaps I made at Instacart that I'm looking to not make? Candidly, there's just so much. There's so many mistakes. And a lot of these things are subconscious, right? One of the things that I take even more seriously now is just the selection of the people. Especially the early people, they just make such an important impact on the trajectory of the company. Another one, which is, I learned through Instacart as well as through other companies, was that everyone will talk about how important execution is. You have to execute really well. That's what matters, and of course it does. But it's also the quality of the idea that really matters. If you have a bad idea and excellent execution, that is a zero, all right? And so as I think about the types of things that I want to work on, the quality of the idea needs to be very good. And of course, we of course we're very lucky with Instacart.
What separates like a good idea from like a truly great idea in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole book that could be written about this topic, candidly. I'll share a few things. But number one, you have to be able to answer the question, why now? Like, why is now the time to pursue this idea? When maybe, a few years ago, if it could have been done, like, why wasn't it done? Right? And this is especially true now in the environment that we're living in, because we've had an incredible bull market for the last 10 or so years, where every idea that it had any legs was funded, all right? And so now, you're like, well, why wasn't this idea funded before, all right? Or if the companies attempted it, why didn't they succeed, all right? And so just that question, the why now, is one of the most important questions, and it needs to be answered, pretty early on in any idea. Quite a few.
Yeah, quite a few. Akhil, up front. Sure.
You mentioned there's a deep process in how you evaluate ideas. A couple of things you mentioned: kill them as quickly as possible, to the extent, or try to figure out how to say you can't kill them after you write them down. The other was iterate quickly. Are there contrarian aspects that other people think you should do, but you don't actually do or think about as you evaluate ideas, or do that other people don't? And part of that question that I would love to have more color on is, you also mentioned at the start, you should not be afraid of doing ideas or tackling ideas that you don't necessarily have prior, let's just say, experience in. Mm-hmm. As long as within 1 year you're at 5% or in the top 5%. But now you also mentioned that you have been evaluating ideas where you said, I'm not the right founder for it.
Yeah.
What are some of those factors as you go, and how have you sort of accelerated that? What factors sort of are in that checkbox list that says you should not be the founder?
Got it. So there are a couple of questions here. So first question is, how do you know if there's a fit between what you're doing, you and the idea? All right. Great question. And then the second part perhaps is, are there maybe contrarian points of view that I have on ideas, right? So let's start with the second one first, which is, are there contrarian things that I think about? I think that people take, in the early ideation phase, people get dissuaded by competition too easily. And people will say, oh, there's a couple of these startups that are already doing it, so we should not enter this space. And I actually think that's when you want to enter this space, all right? That's when it's actually very interesting. Especially in the environment that we're living in right now, where there is, starting companies is actually cool. And so there's so many people, around the world who are experimenting, and it's, the barrier to starting a company is so low, right? That if there are a couple of companies, that shows you there's actual demand there, right? Now, you don't do that in saturated fields where, like, if you wanted to create a ride-sharing app, perhaps the times will, the ship sailed for that one, right? So I actually get excited when there's a little bit of competition. On the founder product fit, founder market fit, what do you want your data to look like? All right. If you are a consumer product person and the company requires enterprise sales and you don't enjoy that, right? Like, maybe you're not the right person, because I love enterprise sales, right? And so I'm actively thinking, I also love consumer, but I'm actively thinking about how, you can really solve the enterprise's problems, right? I love that. And in some cases, I'm also a very impatient person, all right? And so, that constellation that I talked about, it would have taken me 15 years to have the first version of the product, all right? And I just can't wait that long. And so, you have to think about what your day looks like, and, can you see yourself in that world? And that tells you if there's a founder product market fit.
Awesome. Maybe 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up. In the back.
Compared to great things about you from your neighbor, who's my close friend. What is great done person is from Joko. So my
So
question.
you know my neighbor?
Yes. She's also a Mehta, but I think most. So yeah.
So they're really spicy questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, okay, I can try to. Okay, so the question there is, if you have to place your bets again in the grocery space the next 5 to 6 years, where would that be?
If I had to place a bet in the grocery space, I think that candidly, if there were any big bets that I was excited about, they're likely already happening at Instacart today. Because, as a category leader in grocery, we take that very seriously, and we wanted to make sure that in those areas we had the right bets.
Maybe the question for that is that Instacart.
Say that again?
Maybe the question for that is that Instacart.
Yeah, but of course, there's a lot of different things that we do at Instacart, and so perhaps that would be involved in there. But look, I actually think there's really interesting opportunities in grocery around the world. People eat 21 meals a week, give or take, right? And most of those meals are not being facilitated by any platform, around the world. And so I actually think there's a real opportunity to help facilitate that and make that easier, make that healthier, make that more convenient for people.
And last question, over here on the left side.
We have a group of Instacart workers here right now, so yeah, really, thank you for everything you did. Just was curious, could you tell us a little bit about building the culture at Instacart and kind of what you did to, and any cultural practices or fun stories that you have?
Of course, great question from an Instacarter. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the culture. Well, like what are the things that you like about the culture? And then
The Thursday happy hours.
anything outside of drinking?
Fournette, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, that was wonderful. This was in the very early days at Instacart, and I had around me some of the best people I'd ever worked with, and so what I did was I looked around and wrote down the one thing that I love about what they do. All right. One person was just, the sort of the full ownership kind of a person, right? Like where you give them a task, a business problem, and they were an engineer, but they would go figure out how to solve it, and it would be done. All right. Another person was just, like they were, I don't know how they did it, but they did it incredibly fast in a way that like was incredibly high quality. And so, things like that, they're just like, I just looked around and I basically said, well, like if we wanted to scale the company, right, what would we want in our team? We would want more people like, the people around me. And so those basically became our company values. And that's, consciously or subconsciously, what Instacart's culture is today.
Couldn't have planned it a better last question. Thank you for that. So with that, thank you so much. I know it means a lot that it's been like 60 minutes, and I know you check your email every 15 seconds, so it means a lot to us in the community that you've held off for 60 minutes. But it was incredible learning from all of your stories, pre-Instacart, at Instacart, and we are so looking forward to what you're building next. So we have no doubt it'll be amazing.
Thank you.
So if everyone can give a round of applause.